The earthquake that struck Kobe happened early in the morning. This magnitude 7.3 quake caused the worst damage in years. What if a quake of the same magnitude were to strike Shinjuku? Would you survive? Japan is an earthquake-prone country, and numerous earthquakes have caused damage all over the country. From time to time, Tokyo experiences major earthquakes such as the Ansei earthquake of 1855 and the Kanto earthquake of 1923. Why does Japan get so many earthquakes? Let's look at what triggers them. The Earth's surface is covered by more than 10 plates. Every year, these plates move several centimeters with the flow of the mantle beneath them. Earthquakes occur at the boundaries of these plates. Japan is situated at the confluence of 4 plates: the Pacific, Eurasian, Philippine Sea, and North American plates. Movement in the Earth's crust here produces one of the highest concentrations of earthquakes in the world. When a plate covering the seabed sinks, it subducts under the edge of its adjacent continental plate. The tip of the continental plate comes under pressure, gradually distorting as it tries to return to normal, then suddenly springs back. The result is a trench earthquake. But when an oceanic plate sinks, strain builds up at the boundary of the continental and oceanic plates, or inside the continental plate, damaging the rock. When directly below a city, the result is a direct hit earthquake. So what types of earthquakes does Tokyo experience? This chart shows the magnitude 5+ earthquakes that have rocked the city over the past 400 years. The 1703 Genroku earthquake was a major trench quake, just like the Kanto earthquake of 1923. Given that trench quakes occur every 200 to 300 years, and it is only 80 years since the last one, we are in no immediate danger of one now. However, Kanto-type trench quakes are usually followed 70 or 80 years later by direct hit ones of around magnitude 7. Now that more than 80 years have passed since the Kanto quake, Tokyo is in danger of a direct hit magnitude 7 event. So what kind of damage would a direct hit earthquake do to Tokyo? The most damaging earthquake to ever hit Tokyo was the Kanto quake of September 1st, 1923. The damage from the Kanto quake centered on Tokyo and Yokohama. More than 60,000 died in Tokyo alone, most killed when their wooden houses caught fire or collapsed. This distribution map infers the seismic intensity of the deadly Kanto quake from statistics on totally destroyed houses. We can see how the force was unevenly distributed. The differences in intensity reflect Tokyo's geology. The ground under the city consists of a plateau based on the Kanto loam layer and alluvial lowland. The lowland, weaker ground formed comparatively recently, is most susceptible to earthquakes. The plateau part Shinjuku is built on is basically firm and comparatively less susceptible, but damage could occur depending on the aging of homes and their structures and surroundings. Shinjuku is a mishmash of styles. Its center is a cluster of skyscrapers, and restaurants and bars crowd together. From quiet residential streets to densely packed wooden homes, Shinjuku has many different faces. In August 1997, Tokyo carried out an assessment of expected damage from a direct hit earthquake, magnitude 7.2, striking at 6 p.m. on a winter's evening directly under Tokyo's 23 cities. Shinjuku would experience a jolt of intensity 5 to 6. This is a risk area data map for Shinjuku. Based on this assessment, it reflects ground structure and age of buildings. The red areas indicate high rates of building collapse. Why are some areas riskier than others? One factor is high-density wooden housing and narrow lanes with houses close together. What about fires? We can see that they also occur in these areas. Many fires start from collapsed buildings, and this is the result. The risk area data map was compiled from scientific data, but the reality may differ. However, Shinjuku certainly has areas of high-density, decrepit wooden houses with a high risk of collapse. Shinjuku also has many block walls and some bluffs. When an earthquake occurs, a bluff can cause landslip damage. In the Kobe earthquake, buildings built near bluffs were damaged. To prevent landslip damage, retaining walls are being built. Bluff modification is vital to mitigating earthquake damage. In the Kobe earthquake, it was decrepit old wooden houses that instantly collapsed. These houses were completely destroyed. The whole house was suddenly shaken, and by the time the inhabitants realized what was happening, it was already too late. Those killed in Kobe probably lost their lives this way. More than 80% of those killed were crushed by buildings or furniture. Most died from crushing or suffocation when their chests or abdomens were constricted. So preventing buildings and furniture from toppling reduces earthquake casualties. Computer graphics simulate how buildings topple. It only takes 10 to 20 seconds for a building to completely collapse. So why do old wooden houses collapse in earthquakes? And what about the buildings that escaped destruction? First, the buildings that collapsed were almost all older pre-1981 structures. After 1981, the earthquake design code was tightened, and around 74% of the buildings constructed after that time were undamaged. In addition to building age factors are construction problems. The basic structure of wooden houses is based on vertical post-supporting loads, horizontal beams supporting weight and securing the posts, and cross-bracing to resist horizontal movement during earthquakes. The walls designed to withstand earthquakes are the load-bearing walls. Consisting of cross-bracing and structural plywood, they restrict horizontal movement during earthquakes. The houses that collapsed in the Kobe quake had few load-bearing walls with little cross-bracing. If such walls were present, they were insufficient or in one direction only, and many of these buildings were damaged. This is a building with strong cross-bracing. Diagonal bracing allows walls to bear loads and resist earthquakes. Let's see how cross-bracing affects horizontal movement during earthquakes. Walls with no cross-bracing move significantly. But if we believe that walls with cross-bracing are safe, we need to think again. This is an earthquake resistance experiment using an actual size wooden house framework. Cross-bracing is present, but the framework still collapsed. To withstand an earthquake, more reinforcement is necessary. Many houses probably collapsed because of joining deficiencies. Transferring the force of an earthquake to the ground requires secure connections between the foundations and the ground plates, and between the ground plates and the posts. Anchor bolts and hold-down mountings are needed. Some houses collapsed because ground plates and foundations were not properly connected by anchor bolts. And houses with no walls on the street side, like shops, were damaged. Buildings where the ground floor was a shop and the second floor a home were severely damaged, with deformation concentrated on the ground floor. What is clear is that differences in buildings' construction, absence of load-bearing walls, and inadequate joining affect the amount of damage. Is the home you live in safe? What do you know about its structure? Seismic diagnosis can establish how well your house could withstand an earthquake. You can perform this diagnosis yourself on the internet. You can diagnose your own home based on information on the ground under it, foundations, the type of construction, and wall placement. But there are some areas you should leave to the experts. The best thing is to talk to experts after your own diagnosis. The Shinjuku City office offers advice on surviving earthquakes, and everyone is welcome to take advantage of it. If your diagnosis produces a low overall score, you need to think about aseismic retrofitting or other reinforcement measures. Reinforcement is needed if the foundations lack a continuous footing, the walls are too thin, not evenly placed, deterioration is advanced, or mortar is peeling. Aseismic retrofitting includes a raft of measures, including inserting diagonal bracing, increasing load-bearing walls, and installing new fastenings at joints. This reinforcement can satisfy earthquake-proofing standards, but another way of making your home more earthquake-resistant is to discuss your options with an expert, establish priorities reflecting your own lifestyle conditions, and reinforce your home partially or in stages. One other factor that produced casualties in the Kobe earthquake was toppling furniture. Although the building remained intact, some people were crushed by furniture or items falling onto their heads. How does furniture behave during an earthquake? This is an earthquake experiment with furniture. It shows how dangerous furniture can be unless restrained. The most common method of restraining furniture is metal fastenings, or instead of fastenings, simply placing a stop device underneath to prevent sliding can be very effective. And there are other types of immobilizing devices that do not damage the furniture and are easy to install. When the door glass on kitchenware cabinets breaks, flying fragments can be dangerous. To prevent this, the glass can be covered by a film, or the door can be secured with a fastening when not in use. In addition to devices to secure furniture, the placement of the furniture is also important, in the bedroom in particular. Basically, you should avoid having large items in the bedroom, but if you do, you should sleep next to the furniture or at a distance further than it is tall. These precautions can protect you from toppling furniture. No one knows when an earthquake will strike. Sometimes, as with the recent Mid-Niigata earthquake, aftershocks may continue for some time. Or people may be unable to return home for a long time because of the danger of collapse. Nearly all earthquake victims are crushed beneath buildings without even being aware of what is happening. In a major earthquake, people are basically helpless. What is the environment around your home? What about its structure? Do you know how earthquake-resistant your home is? Your chances of surviving an earthquake are closely linked to building safety. How to proof buildings against earthquakes? Whether you and your family survive an earthquake is in your own hands.